The world order is changing, and everyone with ambition for power is making their move. And guess who they are making their move on? On Africa. Hi, my name is Olufolake, and I hope you make sense of policy. Welcome to Africa in the World series, a series where we will track Africa's position in a shifting global order. In part one, which is now this is part one of the series. We're going to start with the big picture, where Africa stands as the old order breaks apart, and whether we actually have the power to shape our own future. Let's get cracking. Well, yes, what's happening? The global system that has defined the last 70 years is loosening. American dominance has been challenged. China is expanding its economic and political reach. Europe is struggling to stay relevant. And middle powers like India, Turkey, Brazil, and the UAE are also trying to cover their own influence. And right in the middle of all of this is Africa. So why is Africa important in this? Well, Africa is home to over 1.4 billion people, which is roughly 70% of the world's population. And that population is projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. And that shows a massive consumer market, a young workforce, a political weight in multilateral institutions like IMF and the UN. And then there are also resources. About 30% of the world's remaining mineral reserves are here in Africa. Think of cobalt, lithium, graphite, rare earths, which are all materials that are important for powering batteries, electric vehicles, renewable energy, smartphones. So which means that if you want to build the future, you need what Africa has. So naturally, everyone wants in. Major powers have their strategy. China has Belt and Road Initiative. US has its infrastructure partnerships. EU has Global Gateway. Russia as security cooperation, India, Turkey, Gulf states, all of them, they have strategy. And this gives Africa something that is very important, which is options. Unlike before, African countries are no longer confined to former colonial partners. So which means that if one partner demands too much, they have alternative, and that alternative gives leverage. But leverage is only powerful if you know how to use it. And that brings us to the central idea of this series, African agency. You see, African agency is literally the ability of African governments and institutions to determine their own direction rather than having it dictated by external powers. African agency means negotiating from strength, setting terms that serve African interests, having the autonomy to say no. And this is very important because for decades, Africa was framed as a passive continent, a recipient of aid, a site of competition, a resource base. So what Africa Agency does is that it challenges that narrative. It insists that African states are actors with interests and strategies of their own. But do we truly have that agency? Well, over this series, we are going to explore Africa's relationships with major and middle powers, as well as with the Gulf states. And the essence of this series is to ask one consistent question. Does the relationship with foreign actors enhance African agency, or does it undermine it? I need you to follow along the series. So see you in part two.